Hello, friends. Welcome back to the School of Self-Worth. I am your host, Nicole Song. And today is such a fantastic conversation for all of you. I had the great honor and privilege of welcoming Athena Concannon to the podcast. And Athena teaches women how to step away from comparison and perfectionism and to instead create a life of balance and intention, especially with their fitness and their nutrition, so they can come out feeling really confident and strong. And Athena is a coach who I personally know well. I love her, and she really walks her talk and what she teaches in her community. So I am super excited for you to hear about the essential pieces that really women over 35 should be looking at to support their strength, their nutrition, and living really full, expansive lives. So stay tuned for an incredible conversation with Athena. And if you're an Asian American woman leader who wants the exact step-by-step to understand the secret language of intuition, I've got a private podcast that gives you the complete behind the scenes on how to master intuitive communication patterns. DM me secret at Nicole Song on Instagram to get all of the great details. Okay, friends, let's dig into today's conversation. Athena, I am so excited that you're here. Welcome to the School of Self-Worth.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, I love the topics that you cover and what you really do and how you support women in the journey of health and nutrition. And I feel like she works with women who are over 35. And I was like, oh, yeah, like I'm in that category. And a lot of what you talk about is so relevant. But could you tell us first a little bit about yourself and then also about your journey with your own health and being a woman who tends towards the high achiever, towards the perfectionism, and how that really impacted you over time and how you started to untangle that. So I know that was a lot of questions, but like just tell us about yourself first. We'll start with that.
Yeah, I would love to. So, again, thank you for having me. My name's Athena Concannon. I'm a certified personal trainer, certified nutrition coach, and I do have specialties in pregnancy and postpartum. So, I do work a lot with working moms over 35 and helping them get back to finding a lot of structure and intentionality in their fitness and nutrition journeys. A lot of them want to get stronger again, feel comfortable in their clothes again after having kids, and really also just feel like they're a priority in their own lives again. A lot of them were very active prior to having kids. A lot identify as former athletes, maybe in high school and college. And it's really easy to lose yourself or that part of yourself in the motherhood journey. So that's really what I do with my clients and help them just navigate that new season of life and with different circumstances than they had prior. My own journey really started. My fitness journey started back in the day in college. I taught on-campus fitness classes as my college job. Thought it was so great that I could make money while I was working out. So that's where it all began. The gym, it became my quote unquote happy place.
Mhm.
And I continued working out all the time. I'd be home from college, I would be in the gym. My personal life, I come from a family that had mental illness, very chaotic dynamic. So the gym was my escape. Now, what again started as this healthy outlet turned really into a way for me to get control, and it became a little unhealthy,
Mm.
actually. I would be spending a lot of time doing double sessions or going for a run and then taking a class, and it was just a lot on my body. However, I was being constantly praised for being so motivated, being so disciplined, being someone who's so dedicated, doing so much, and that really fueled my achiever personality. So that's where that ties in because I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone thinks I'm the best at this, so I'm going to
Mhm.
keep going. That was really at a time too where I think diet culture wasn't being called out as much as it is now. And so even though I personally never really had a yo-yo dieting journey, I wouldn't say I was a chronic dieter, but I definitely let what I saw other people doing influence the way that I thought about food and fitness and the things that I thought I had to do in order to be healthy for the sake of wellness. So I'm going to pause because I've been talking a lot.
Oh, no, you're perfect. Well, and actually what you're saying though is interesting to me because I feel like so I'm like a late bloomer mover. And I started in like my 20s and doing yoga and practicing like that. And then I wrote a
Mhm.
fitness column. I think I've shared that with you for a long time for
Yeah.
the Seattle Times. But it's so interesting because my perspective is like such a different one than yours. Because I always think about how hard it is for people to motivate to move. Like, I think especially once you hit your 30s and 40s and you're like have a lot going on your plate in your life, it's like just
Mhm.
not that high priority. So it's interesting to me because I know that this other side of it exists for people where they like are overactive. It's like too much, it's like a fixation. So
Mhm.
I'm just interested in it, just more to insert from that place because I've never been that kind of person. To me, it's always like, how do I move more? How do I just get on a walk? But I'm also never doing it with the idea of like I need to be skinny or look a certain way. I just know that it's better literally for like my cardiovascular system and my health and like my blood work. And I never go in and have any issues when I'm getting blood work taken with my
Mhm.
doctor because I think because I am so active. But it's such an interest, like you brought up something that I think is already just like such a fine line, right? It's like how can you be
Yes.
active and move but not take it to that sort of obsessive overdoing it kind of place.
Yeah, and I definitely got there. A lot of my clients were there at one point in their
Mm,
lives, and I do think that that can be very jarring to kind of come back and realize, oh, I actually might not need to do as much as I thought, or maybe I need to add in these other things that I'm not doing that actually could move the dial toward my physique goals, health goals, performance goals, whatever the goals are,
right.
more significantly than, say, all the hours in the gym would.
Right. Yeah, and it is really interesting because, like, a lot of times, like, I came into the world of, like, when you move your body more, you can, like, live your life. Like, you can haul
Yes.
your groceries around, you can pick your kid
Mhm.
up, like, you don't have back pain or sciatica pain just from, like, doing regular things. Like, you don't throw your back out picking up socks off the floor, like, that kinda stuff. But there is a balance, I think, always of, like, how do we do it to take care of ourselves and then not take it over the edge and finding and again, like, hitting the goals, but what are the goals? So maybe we should start there. It's like, how do you start to define the goals in a way like when you're starting to release that mentality of unhealthy ways of setting goals? How do you start to set goals in a way that feels actually accurate and correct for your body, your lifestyle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it can be really helpful and powerful to approach it from how you want to feel
Mm,
ultimately instead of what you want to look like. And that can certainly play a part in it. It does. But if you go from it from a place of, okay, I want to feel, let's just pick three things. I want to feel energized, I want to feel strong, and I want to feel confident. Then you can start to create some actions that really align with that journey and not necessarily get caught up in all these like nitty gritty right ways of things, wrong ways of things. You can decide what actions are going to allow me as a unique person, an individual, to get to that place. I love creating feeling goals and
mhm.
then taking the action from there.
Okay, so really just starting to get into that feeling of like, okay, I want to feel energized, strong, and confident. And I say this actually not to like make this harder for you, but I'm curious because I actually
Mhm.
feel all of those things. And then
Mhm.
if you have clients who are in that place, then are you like, okay, I'm good? Or is it like, because I think we are trained by diet culture. And then also something you mentioned before we got on, like we're influenced constantly by what we see on social media and what people are saying to us. Is there anything to do? Or is it like once you're there, then it's like just about maintaining that feeling and experience?
Yeah, I think it is about maintaining that feeling and experience and keeping momentum with it because part of life is going to be all the ebbs and flows that come with it. And so, say someone is does feel those three things coming in, there is going to be something that they're there that's lacking for them.
Mhm.
And even if they're feeling those other things, a time in their life might come up where they're like, okay, I do not feel this. And how do I deal without getting totally off track?
Mhm.
You know, if you have a baby, just to go back to that particular scenario of life, and all of a sudden your whole body is different and you might not be able to lift how you used to lift in ways that feel good in your body. I'm not even talking about baby weight gain or anything like that right now. It could be just, wow, squats don't feel good in my back anymore. So I don't feel confident in the gym. I don't feel strong. Then,
Mhm.
okay, well, what can I do now that might be different from my previous circumstances? And that's just one example, but that could be where, okay, the level of those things will inevitably shift. And it's about kind of keeping yourself going and in line.
Yeah, that's so interesting, right? Because it is like that where you get injured or you have a baby or you like, and also too, I would imagine that postpartum journey evolves too. It's like how you feel 6 months, a year,
100%.
2 years,
Yeah.
like really changes, right?
Yes. 100%. And also, I would add to that that even with different pregnancies or different kids that you have, your
Hmm.
experience is different. I myself am living that right now. I have two children who are 4 and 18 months at the time of recording this. And my experience postpartum with my first was totally different than my experience with my second. And that can be hard to navigate too. I felt very strong after my first. And now it's a whole different learning curve for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so when you're looking and we're talking about like women, like there's just such a vast range of experiences,
Yeah.
right? And then
Mhm.
women are coming in. And so I find oftentimes as coaches we're trying to like talk about how do we help people in a general way. But what do you start to see for women? Like what's one thing for them to start to understand first? Is it like, okay, like my body doesn't feel the way I want it to? Or do you tend to work with women who it's like they already did work out before or during pregnancy and then they're really struggling after that?
Yeah, a lot of it are women that were working out, very active before. It doesn't necessarily have to be pregnancy. I would actually say a life transition has occurred.
Mm.
Whether that is having a baby, having to caretake for somebody, having a huge move or a huge career change, and the dust is settling, maybe a little bit. You can come up for air. And then that is where it can feel jarring to say, how do I get back to how I used to feel? How do I
Mhm.
get this back in my life in a place that makes sense for me now and not necessarily 15 years ago?
Mhm. Yeah, and what would you say for many women around that feeling of like worthiness or feeling like that they are worth spending that time to prioritize and say yes, like I should be like it's actually important for me to feel really physically good in my body. It's not something that's like a fluffy thing on the side, but actually a priority and important.
Yeah, I think just to consider what is the alternative. If you don't feel good in your body, what is that going to cost you down the line and what does that cost you day to day now? How you're showing up at work, how you're showing up with your family. A lot of times it can be really easy to say, okay, I just can't do this. I don't have the time. I have to put my kids first. But are you really putting your kids first if you end up showing up in your interactions at home in a way where you're, I don't know, not feeling present because you're just thinking about how crappy you feel?
Mhm.
Or if you are showing up resentfully with your partner because you haven't taken the time for yourself, or you just are showing up going through the motions of a job that you used to love and now you are approaching that with, I just have to get through, instead of I'm here to really like put in my most creative work and feel fulfilled.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, totally. I feel like that is so true for so many of us. Well, and it also brings up something else, which is stress, because that's really like one of the major causes for so many people to not do things. Even though I find that like movement is one of the greatest ways to de-stress,
Hmm. Hmm.
the when we're really deep in the stress, that can be really challenging. So, can you talk a little bit more about how that impacts our motivation? It impacts how we feel, like it impacts our ability to do the things that we want to that help us get that energy and strength back.
Yeah, when you're under a lot of stress, just day-to-day stress, and this is something that I will refer to as our perceived daily stressors. Yes, your motivation is going to be down. It's going to be harder to get yourself to go to the gym. It's You're not going to be as mindful because there's only so much mental capacity that we have. We don't have this infinite amount of decision making power, and so you're going to be probably less mindful about what food choice you make and maybe opt for something you didn't really want to have or that doesn't really make you feel that good in the long run, or wasn't that worth splurging on, whatever that decision is. I think when it comes to stress, what a lot of people don't realize is the amount of stress that can be at play that doesn't fall into that perceived daily stressor category, like your workload or your kids or,
Mm.
I don't know, stubbing your toe. And like the body doesn't really differentiate between types of stressors. So we do have also another category of stress is circadian stress. If our sleep is out of whack or anything that does affect how you sleep, caffeine intake, jet lag, night shift working, any of that. Or if you have a lot of inflammatory stress inside your body going on, then that's a very physiological thing happening. Now you have some perceived life stressors going on. You don't get a lot of sleep. That likely is causing some glycemic imbalances in your body anyways, and now your body is really taking a hit. So sometimes when it comes to stress, we don't realize that. And then what do? To manage our stress, and this is sort of where I was, we add high intensity workouts and more to that load. And now your stress cup is kind of overflowing. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that a lot of times we perceive, like, especially if you're like not physically feeling good, people
Mhm.
are trained to think like if I just go really hardcore in the gym, like that will make me feel better.
Yeah. And I think a good way to understand it is just that exercise in and of itself, although it can be stress relieving, it is stress relieving, it is also a type of stress on your body. And that's where you really have to work to find that balance of how much is too much and how much is enough. When you say are like burning the candle at both ends and you have all this stuff going on, and now you're adding a ton of high impact exercise, or maybe you don't feel good, so you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just slash a bunch of calories. That also is a stress on the body to go
Mhm.
too deep into a calorie deficit. Now your body is saying, whoa, what are you doing? What are you giving me? And maybe it's going to store more fat or stop some sort of function that it doesn't deem necessary for today, like reproduction hormones or thyroid hormones.
Mm.
And then a whole slew of issues can start to happen.
Yeah, that makes actually so much sense because I feel like a lot of times we don't remember that there's just so many types of stress. And then we think if we're spending all day, like say on a computer and doing that work deep stress, and then
Mhm.
you're going into a hardcore workout thinking it's
Mhm.
de-stressing you, but it's actually just adding a different kind of stress. And then on top of it, like you're drinking a bunch of caffeine or like maybe not eating the best. And then we're like, why do I feel exhausted? I'm
Yeah.
working out, like whatever that is, right?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of the clients I work with, even if, they're coming back off of that life transition, like in their heads, they're like 5 to 6 workouts a week. I want to get back to that and go, go
Mhm.
big, go home. That they end up feeling a little bit better on maybe 3 to 4 workouts a week and then walking, doing yoga. It doesn't mean if you're not doing using quotes, an official workout on the other day that you're doing nothing and just sedentary all of a sudden. I think we
Mhm.
go into that all or nothing mindset and then can start beating ourselves up that we're not doing enough, but letting something be enough is great.
Mhm. And yeah, could you talk about that? I also find a lot of my women are in that all or nothing. It's like I'm either going to do 5 workouts a week
Hmm.
or I'm not going to work out. And I'm like, okay, well, or we could work out less or just
Yeah.
like do what we can. And how do you start to help women with that? Like, and how if you have that mindset, like how can you start to dial it in to help yourself to do some?
Yeah. All or something. When it comes to that mindset, I think really redefining what consistency means to you
Mhm.
can be really helpful. So a lot of us have just been, I guess, conditioned to believe that consistency is like doing the same exact habit 365 days of the year in the same exact way all the time. And that's just not realistic because we don't live in this vacuum or bubble. So redefining consistency as the behaviors that you're doing more often than not I think can be really powerful because some weeks those behaviors are going to be for workouts. Another week, you might hit 3. Another week, you hit 4 again. Another week, shit hits the fan and you're doing none. And that doesn't mean you're not consistent anymore. If we can view these things as part of the track instead of on and off the track so much, we can start to be a lot more gentle with ourselves and show ourselves a lot more self-compassion and really don't feel like we have so much to get back to after any kind of blip happens that takes us off that perfect ideal that we have in our heads for how things are going to go.
Yeah, totally. And it also becomes a different kind of stress there, right? When you're like, oh my gosh, like
Mhm.
I'm failing, I'm not hitting every mark and every goal that I set for myself physically. And then you get
Mhm.
all like anxious about it. And versus actually that relaxation
Yeah,
is
when you can
huge and really important.
just breathe into it. We were just my client success manager and I were just going over our client submissions for this week, and one of our clients shared that she was actually feeling so happy that she was celebrating her mindset around doing one workout instead of hitting her 3 because it just felt like such a shift for her to be able to not look at that as a failure.
Mm.
And just like imagine where your mental energy could go if you're not always beating yourself up.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like that's such an important thing. Like, how can you just like not feel like a failure? And I think this is just like a topic in general for so many
Mhm.
people. It's like, how can I not feel like a failure about XYZ? But what would you say for women around like not feeling like a failure around their health, like the current state of your health, whatever it is? What would be that first step to start to accept it or to start to own it how it is?
What are you doing? How are you showing up for yourself? And just
Mhm.
identify one thing. Did you drink a glass of water today?
Mm.
Yes? Great. You did something. Like we often feel like the changes have to be, or our actions, habits have to be these huge things,
Mhm.
and they really don't need to be. One little catchphrase that I use in my client community is this concept of daily definites, where we all have different ones, but if you can just name maybe 1 to 2, 1 to 3 items that that 95% of the time you can hit that daily, like that's kind of your base. And that could be like for me, it's move my body in some way every day. I don't put any parameters around that
Mm.
because then I feel like I've failed if I didn't hit them. But I will move if that means a 1 minute stretch on a day that's totally crazy. I did it and I feel successful. Another one could be one meal that has just a lot of vegetables in it. So even if the other 2 don't have any, at least I've hit that, you know? Like I think just coming up with your own definitions and your own parameters will be huge for making you feel more successful because now you're not living up to all these other shoulds and rules that are just put out there by who? Doesn't
Mhm.
matter to you what someone else says.
Yeah, I always find that really fascinating. I've had to do a lot of work myself around just being like moving consistently. But then if you have
Mhm.
a day like I had, we're recording this around the holidays. Like I had a cookie party with my friends, and I ate bagels and cookies all day yesterday, and like that was
Yeah.
pretty. I had like 2 tomato slices, like that was like my
Yeah.
whole. And I was just like, it's okay, and like I didn't move that much. Like I did a few squats like in my office, and then that was the extent of it. And I was just like,
Mhm.
whatever, Nicole, like you're fine. Like you don't have to be upset at yourself for how that went. But it's interesting how ingrained that can be to be like, oh, that was like an air quote bad day. Like I didn't do everything I was supposed to do to like balance my day. And instead of just being like, oh, it's like a fun celebratory day, like I just get to have it
Yeah.
be how it was. It was perfect. It was great.
Yeah, and if you think about it from the standpoint of, okay, say you have a day where everything does go quote unquote right or good or perfect, whatever you
Mhm.
want to say, that one day is not going to push you to the direction of, okay, now I'm at my best. I've hit my goal, like just because of that one good day. So
Right.
a bad day doesn't unravel everything.
Mm,
What unravels everything is letting a day where you don't have a vegetable at all turn into 30 days that you don't have a vegetable at all just because you're like, okay, well, that day happened. So now the rest of the month is off. that's what is going to actually move the dial more in the
Mm.
direction you probably don't want it to.
Yeah, so it's like the bigger picture of consistency, but not like the perfectionist consistency,
Hmm.
but just simply like making some improvements every day.
Yeah.
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 And it's so
Hmm.
funny. I mean, I say that and I'm like, man, it's so hard for humans to do that sometimes, Like we really struggle with that. Like I do too. It's like it's just the one thing because I like to weightlift.
Hmm.
And my weightlifting coaches say this, and we're kind of on a hiatus for December. And they're just like, it doesn't matter how often, it's just doing it. It's just like come in and like even if it's a crappy lifting day, like just come in and lift. And it can be light. It doesn't have to be anything good, but just the fact that you showed up is going to be more helpful than not. And I was like, oh yeah, like, and it's what's getting me there, even though there's no class. Just like, okay, I'm just going to be here. And even if it's just 30 minutes of whatever, it's better than not doing it. But it's hard. It's hard for me too. Like it's hard for us as humans, I think, sometimes to remember that because we just want to be like, okay, like all or nothing instead of the
Hmm.
long term gain.
Yeah, you're building the power of showing up for yourself. You're building that habit. And even if you drive to the gym and you do your warm up, and I think there's a lot to be said about just if your body's not feeling it, and sometimes it's not. And there's a difference between, I don't want to work out today, but I'm going to, do it anyways versus like, no, my body is actually very tired today and I'm here and I did my warm up and maybe that's it for today.
Hmm.
But I still did that.
Yeah, totally. And I used to always tell myself, I still do this sometimes where I'm like, you're going to go and you're just going to do 15 minutes and just
Hmm.
see how it feels. And it almost always turns into like a full workout and it's
Almost
fine.
always. Yeah.
But I just had like, that's the only way I could get myself like off
Hmm.
the floor, get in the
Hmm.
car, like,
Yeah.
okay, it's time to go.
And like
Like,
bargain each step.
totally. Yeah. And I do. And like, that's how it's given me the habit of like, I just go anyway. But it is kind of funny how you have to like, you do have to bargain with yourself
Hmm.
sometimes just to like make something small happen to
Hmm.
get into that consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well, what would you say so let's see, like for women who are struggling with this, they're like, okay, I'm just like struggling to feel good, connected in my body, like, and to feel like healthy and energized, any of those things that we've been talking about. What
Mhm.
would you say for them is like the first thing for them to do? Like, what would be the main tip to start with?
I'm going to answer this in two ways. One, I'm going to give you just like a very specific answer. I would say
Hmm.
to just start walking. It
Mm.
is the most accessible thing. You don't have to like think. You can just go out and do it.
Mhm.
Um, if you're struggling to feel good, you're probably also just going to be struggling to think about, okay, what are all the things that I need to do to start feeling better and to take it one step at a time. One thing at a time. You don't have to cross like every T and dot every I the second you decide I'm going to make a change for my body. So if I had to pick one habit to start with, I would say just get out there and go for a walk. It really makes everything feel better. But then once you can prove to yourself, okay, I have a couple of weeks of getting out there and getting that walk in, I don't know, 5 days a week under my belt.
Mhm.
Whatever your goal is, I don't even like to give numbers sometimes because like someone's gonna be like, "Oh, I didn't do that much." Pick your goal with it, prove to yourself you can do it, and then you add in the next thing. Like there's no rush, and that's the thing. We can feel like, oh, we're so behind, or I should be doing more, but maybe the
Mm.
next week, okay, now I'm going to add the drinking water on top of the walking, and pick these things that are big rocks, but they make a difference, even though they seem like they're not a big deal.
Mhm.
Then the next thing. So really, that like step by step, one thing at a time approach.
Yeah, I love that because I think it's so easy when we have stress that we get really overwhelmed by the whole like, oh, I have to do this whole plan. I have to put this whole 3-month plan into place. And that feels really
Hmm.
overwhelming versus being like, what if I just took a 15-minute walk today and then just see
Hmm.
how I feel afterward? And then maybe tomorrow I can do it again. Right. And then
Yeah.
maybe I'll drink some water too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you have that in place, you will feel better. It's going to be
Hmm.
more than you're doing, like whatever you're picking, you will feel better. And then it's time to look at the next step of it. But really also trying to just not get distracted by all the stuff out there and stick with the basics. The basics are called the basics for a reason, and it's because they work.
Hmm.
And I would say that the most fit people, I guess, that are probably doing the basics on repeat over and over and over.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that repetition of just
Mhm,
like things that they're not things you don't know. You just have to do them.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I'm curious then. Let's see. I'm just listening in for the next question for you, Athena, because I love
Sure.
this. I feel like um, I'm just curious too, like if you tackle work with women around like their identity and the challenge of like that identity, if like that comes up for people around like I'm a person who works out, I'm a working mom who works out, I am any of those things. Like if that comes up for a lot of women and they struggle with that, like who they are physically, if that is something that you tackle.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I personally myself even relate to this right now of trying to,
Mhm.
find who I am in this new season of life for me with two little kids and being an entrepreneur. A lot of my clients will feel a little disconnected from, I guess, their past selves and struggle to bring pieces of that into their current life. So, as part of the holistic approach that I take with our community, where it's not just workouts and it's not just nutrition and what you're eating, but self care kind of being the other piece of it with the stress management and all that, it's also trying to find, okay, what does bring you joy now? And maybe we can't do that specific thing every day, but how can we bring in some elements of it into our week? So, and then that has a trickle down effect.
Mm.
That in and of itself is going to make you feel more confident, probably, that you're doing the thing that you like to do. Or you have some other aspects of satisfaction built into your day to day. So maybe you won't be as likely to nosedive into the cabinets looking for sweets at night if you have that built in. So I think that, yes, a lot of people do struggle with identity, and we have to work to find like how can we create that for ourselves now.
Yeah, so powerful. Like it's such an important thing. I feel like as we change and evolve in life, that we're able to
Mhm.
really know who we are in those different times and phases.
Yeah. Hmm.
Amazing. Well, Athena, what is the best way for people to find you or to reach out to you?
Yeah. So the place that I am the most is on Instagram. My handle is at Athena Concannon, my full name. My website is achievewithathena.com. And in 2024, I will just put this out there right now. I am actually starting a podcast. So that'll be coming out then.
Exciting.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
exciting. Awesome. Well, it's been such a joy to have you with us, and I appreciate it so much. And now we get to do the most fun part, which is our quick fire questions, rapid fire. I change the name all the time. So, rapid fire questions. So,
Okay.
are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Ready? Okay. Okay. What's the first? They're really easy. So, what was the last thing that you watched on television?
What did I last watch on television? Oh, we watched a Christmas movie last night, and now I'm gonna forget the name of it. I forgot the name of it. Oh my gosh, we watched a Christmas movie, and
Is it a
also
classic?
no, it's like a really crappy, crappy new one. I'm bad at this one.
It's
Next
okay. Christmas movie. That totally works.
Christmas movie.
Amazing. Okay. What is on your nightstand?
I have some lotion. I have my glasses case. I have a coaster and a lamp.
Perfect. Amazing. Okay. And then when was the last time you tried something new and what was it?
So in work, I just actually tried a new Facebook ad. So that is not that like exciting from a personal kind of standpoint, but it was the first thing that did come to my mind. So that was cool. And I would say on the personal front, last time I tried something new, hmm, I guess I need to try some new things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was laughing when you talked about the Facebook ad. I was like, that's why we are entrepreneurs, right? That's our hashtag. So
I'm like, that was new. That was exciting for me.
that is
Really.
exciting. I know. I always laugh. That's what my husband calls me. Okay.
We hosted Thanksgiving. That was new.
Oh, that is new.
Yeah.
That's a big
Yeah.
thing to host Thanksgiving with two little kids, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that is exciting. Awesome. Did you do anything different? Like, have you never made the whole turkey and the whole deal?
Yeah, we had never just hosted the whole meal, although I mean, I can't take too much credit for that. My husband is the cook in our home.
Okay, so you made it
But I
you.
did the table setting and got all the things. I was the sous chef.
Yes, that's awesome. Oh, so fun. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. What are your top 3 most used emojis on your phone?
Oh, I love this question. I I will often use the one that's like the upside down smiley
Face.
face. Yeah,
Mhm.
like kind of like, oh, things are a little crazy. Um, the one where the eyes are like bugging out, like,
Yeah.
and the muscle.
Muscle, of course. Yes.
Yeah,
Awesome.
obviously. Yeah.
Awesome. I love those. I love that the emoji ones are always very revealing. I like hearing what people use for their emojis. So
I know.
so fun.
It probably depends on the week too, but yeah,
Totally.
those
I
are,
feel
I
like
would say,
mine change frequently and I'm always having to like
yeah,
research for ones I haven't used recently.
yeah.
Recently it's like that head melting one. I like that one a lot too.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Or who
Yeah.
you last were texting the most. That could probably make a big
Yeah, yeah,
difference.
exactly. Yeah. Who are you talking to? Awesome. Well, Athena, thank you so much for being on School of Self-Worth and for sharing your wisdom. And then, those of you who want to follow her on Instagram, find out more. And Athena, thank you so much for sharing with all of us today. We're so grateful to have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.